I think
Taylor, this is Mr. Mercado. Mr.
Yes.
Mercado, is it Lifka?
yes.
Okay. Yeah, just talking. And we
Nice
haven't
meeting
even-
you. How are you?
It's nice to meet you as well.
Okay, so
Danita,
you're gonna share it to the YouTube channel?
yeah, we're actually live. We're live on my YouTube channel. So I will put that on, but now I can't hear you guys.
You can't hear us?
Oh yeah, I can. Okay.
Okay.
So I will put that on the
So you-
face.
Yeah, you should be able to share your YouTube channel to the Facebook page.
Yes. And will you wait, don't introduce them yet because I'm going to share the.
Mm-mm. And then I'm going to check to make sure that it's showing.
And
I have-
I might be able to share that on our Facebook page. So
I have been waiting all month for this conversation.
I know. And Danita and I were chatting because we thought it was working. It's live on YouTube.
It's okay. Troubleshooting at its finest. Y'all are doing great.
Oh, thanks.
Even my
Angela,
dog's
how long have you
frustrated.
been
She's
teaching?
just sighing over here.
So I've been teaching here. This is my first year at Richardson. And so
Okay.
I'm not a typical teacher. And so what am I saying? So I'm an investor by trade.
Okay.
I actually took a leave of absence to get into teaching
Wow. Good for you.
because for me, it's very personal. Because I happen to be, someone on the bell curve, right? When they talk about the students' inequitable sort of education systems and things like that. I wasn't the student who happened to make it and graduate and go to a great college. I was kicked out of school.
Okay.
And so my trajectory, I've been fortunate, I've been blessed. It just so happened that, I was sort of a product of the system. And I lucked out because when I joined the Navy after that, and that exposed me to a lot of people,
Wow.
a lot of opportunity. And so I went to undergrad, got into finance, and a lot of that is just pure luck, to be quite honest, because a lot of my friends growing up aren't in the same situation. And so for me, it's really important to sort of go back.
Totally. And share your story with your kids.
Yeah, and the one thing I've learned most recently really sort of made me say like, okay, pause this whole finance thing. I have to go back to school, is I realized that the students that we're teaching are so much more prepared and have so much more to offer than they realize. And because a lot of that is, I'm fortunate enough to sit along, alumni of Harvard and Stanford and Columbia. And what's hard to find is just sort of grit, being able to just, overcome a lot rather than, being used to having a lot just handed to you. And so you can't really you can't develop that from a book, right? Like it takes time, it takes experience. And sort of our students are going through that. They have that experience, and it's just this untapped potential that many of them may never have an opportunity to really bring to light. And so for me, it's like, I want to share that, and I want to show them like, you have so much more to offer. What people call soft skills aren't soft at all.
Are you working at a public school, or I'm not familiar where anyone's calling from, or?
Yes. So I'm in Richardson ISD. So it's a public elementary school, but it is 6th grade. So it's kind of this like pseudo middle school system that they're in, but it is considered elementary school.
And are you in Dallas or no? I don't know where
I live in
Richardson
Plano.
is.
I live in Plano, so it's Richardson. It borders Dallas.
Okay, I'm from Chicago, but I moved to Texas like 3.5 years ago, so I know not much about the area.
So that makes 2 of us. So I've been here for going on 3.5 years soon.
Okay.
So
Are we ready, Lowry?
Yeah, we're live on the page.
Oh,
Okay.
Awesome.
sorry, we're just chatting away.
Just chatting away, and they're loving it. They're like, oh. So tonight is something that we've all been waiting for. We've had multiple discussion. It is the beginnings of why this group was essentially created. And tonight we're going to be talking about addressing the elephant and the donkey and the Black Lives Matter shirt in the classroom. And with me and my wonderful co-host Lowry, we have Miss Taylor Lifka from Roma ISD and Mr. Andrew Mercado from Richardson ISD. And so I want you guys to go ahead and give a brief introduction of yourselves, and then we'll go on in from there.
Sounds good. Andrew, do you want to go first?
Sure. I was going to leave the floor to you, but I don't mind going first.
Okay.
So thank you, Danita. I truly appreciate the warm welcome. And Lowry, thank you so much for hosting this. Andrew Machado, originally from New York. I don't have much of an accent anymore. However, long story short, I am the product of a New York City public school system. Unfortunately, I was in a rougher part of town. And so my education experience wasn't as joyful as some stories you may hear. But fortunately enough for me, I went to the Navy, spent 6 years active duty there, and I got to just meet a lot of different people, and I was exposed to a lot of things that I otherwise wouldn't have. And so that allowed me to pursue an education. I've been in finance, particularly, and in private equity and debt investments for about going on 6 years now. And in doing that, it was like this epiphany moment where I was sitting with an MD, and she's been doing this for a little bit over 45 years now. And she said, I just wish there were more people like you. And I said, what do you mean more people like me? And she said, you don't have this sense of entitlement. You want to work for everything, and you want to earn everything. And you just have this passion, this commitment, and this drive that you just don't see in this industry. And I said, and in my mind, I'm thinking, I know a lot of people like me. I don't stand out. And she said, well, not like you. There's no one else like you. And it made me think. And I said, no, all the students, all the friends and people I grew up with, they have the same grit. They have the same background. They have the same sort of personality. And that's when it hit me. And it's because of what and I say we as the community of students who grow up in environments like I did and go to public schools like I did, what we go through on a daily basis, what we consider life, what we consider normal, puts us in a position where we have to strive for things. We have to learn to go without. We have to learn to make choices. When I remember as a kid going to Toys R Us, and I said, Mom, I want this, and I want that, I want this, I want that. And she's like, no, we can't have any of that. We came here to get a gift for your brother or your cousin. And I remember crying and always wanting so much. But it's those small things sort of that build that thick skin, that sort of build that ability to continue to persevere, to not necessarily be crushed by a no. And so I decided to take a leave of absence to get into education. And I've been teaching for well over a decade now in the military, and now I've pivoted that into elementary, teaching 6th grade at Richardson ISD. And it's phenomenal because the students I see remind me so much of myself, and that same grit and that same perseverance and that same sort of ability to just sort of say what's on your mind and really be yourself is there. And for me, I just want to serve as this beacon to say, hey, you bring a lot more to the table than what you think. It's not all about, your alma mater. It's not all about sort of who you know and who your network is. Any one of us can go to college. Any one of us can get that education. But there are certain, what people call soft skills that you can't learn from a book. And you all have that. And just to see them in this last month, just how much it enlightens them, how much it brings sort of reality into perspective. And then it's also a benefit because I look like them, I sound like them. And this is not something that they're familiar with. And I can support them in how they feel and what they do. And that's kind of what drove me to what is considered to be a bold statement for having a Black Lives Matter t-shirt on a Bitmoji. And for me, I didn't even think twice about it. I wasn't trying to make a statement. But I do remember my principal coming up to me before we went live, and she said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Do what? Teach?" And she goes, "No, your Bitmoji, it's a tire." And I said, "What do you mean?" She's like, "I'm not going to tell you you can't do it. You can do exactly what you want to do. But I just wanted to give you a heads up." And she left the room, and sort of that solidified it for me of why I'm here and why I want to do this. And it's because of that sort of passive aggression that just goes unspoken for so long. And so here I am, a long introduction, but Ms. Lifka, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank y'all for having me tonight. I feel really honored to share in this space and share a part of my evening with you all on a long Monday. My name is Taylor Lifka. I'm originally from the western suburbs of Chicago. I moved to Texas back in 2017 because I was placed in the Rio Grande Valley, Texas here as a member of the Teach for America Corps year of the 2017 Corps. And I was placed in Roma, which is a really, really small community right on the border of Starr County. So sits right on the border between Miguel and Mexico and then Roma. It's a community of about 10,000 people. And it's really been, I would say, a life-changing experience for me. Growing up in my 20s here in a small town right on the border has taught me so much. And I served my 2 years with Teach for America here at Roma ISD. So I'm still working at my placement school, and it's a 2-year commitment, but I'm starting my 4th year here because I really love my work and I love this community, and learning alongside of my students and community members and learning from and with them really truly has been transformative for my life. I am different from Andrew in that I don't look like most of my kids and I don't share the same background as most of my kids. And I enter my classroom from a place of privilege. And that has, I think, taught me a lot and also taught my students a lot and opened up a lot of dialogue and conversation about what it means to enter this classroom as a white woman and what it means to learn from my students. And I always tried to enter my classroom from a listener stance, first and foremost, especially learning and engaging in a new community, right? Moving from Chicago to Roma took a lot of time, I think, to understand my community and want to grow alongside of my community and not force change, but work together with my community for change. And so that's kind of how I entered this space tonight. And I'm really excited to be back in my classroom after being put on leave for a moment in time there. And I'm excited to be here today with you all.
Thank you, guys.
So you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We are Lake Highlands area Moms and More Against Racism. So more than Lake Highlands, we've grown into all of our Richardson ISD school district and beyond. We're hoping other groups will follow ours in other areas and come together and get started. And more than just moms, we're teachers and dads and grandparents and anyone just wanting to help raise up our children in this village, and anyone that wants to have the back of all the children in our village and protect them and do what's right for them. So when we saw the article about you, Ms. Lifka, that was several people brought it to our attention and wanted, first of all, they were saying, what can we do to make sure she knows we're supporting her? So right off the bat, I want to say to you and to Mr. Machado, we appreciate so much what you were doing to, I believe, and Danita and I believe, not just help children feel affirmed and safe in school, but literally save lives. The affirmation and acceptance that you put in the classroom, we know can literally save lives because it makes that connection to children and sometimes when they may not get it elsewhere. So thank you for that. Just as a token, what we want to do to say thank you, we have done this diversity basket initiative where we've had thousands of dollars donated to put baskets together for all the classrooms in our neighborhood schools so that children can see windows and mirrors. You guys have heard that expression. So windows of books and literature and art, and posters that look like them, but also in some of our schools, which are mostly white and in certain neighborhoods, like in mine, that the children like my kids can see through the windows. So they can see kids that don't look like them. So anyway, we want to send you guys our Amazon wish list, which is filled with tons of craft supplies and books and posters, and let you guys choose what you want for your classrooms. So I'll send that to you. And of course, you might have your own suggestions, but we just want to thank you
That's so cool.
for being here. So we have so many people that have added to that list based on books they've loved and used at different age levels. So we want to do that for you. And I just want to say thank you. You guys, we need more heroes like you for sure.
That's too kind. Thank you so much.
And of course, Mr. Machado, you already know how deeply you affected my son before school even really started. You know, with that, when we logged in to check our classes, and the first thing he saw, had no idea who you were, didn't know you because, you know, we were coming from 5th grade, didn't know 6th grade teachers. But to open up your classroom and to see you in your Black Lives Matter shirt, and for my son to start to cry, that meant a lot. And I sent you an email to let you know that. So that, you know, that small gesture there, it was affirming that even after everything that's happened this year, that we were going to be okay, and that he was going to be okay, and that there were people out there that were going to make sure that he was okay. And so again, I've even told my grandma, my mother, and she's like, "Oh my God, he's so sweet. That's so nice of him." And so I just want to say that meant the world to all of us. It really did. It meant the world to all of us. And again, it's just, I love the fact that you can do no wrong in my eyes. That, you can do no wrong in my eyes. And Miss Lifka, your story just, I was like, where is Roma? How far is that from here? Because, I'm like, I'm ready to drive. How far is that from here?
You can still come. It's a little bit of a ways.
So,
you walked over to your son and you were concerned to Dallas, and you said,
was crying. It was
yeah,
just,
you said, "What's the matter?" And do you remember what he said?
He said, he cares about me.
Wow.
And Dallas doesn't really cry about anything. Like, I don't know what's going on, but there's not much that he cries about. But he cried that day. And that's what he said. He said, he cares about me. He doesn't even know me, and he cares about me. So that stuck with him, that struck a chord with him. And I had to walk away because I was like, I can't cry. I was like, yeah, I'm tough. I'm mom. So I had to go into the kitchen, but it meant the world. And I sat down and sent you that email.
And thank you for sharing it. And the moment I got your email, I showed my wife, and I was like, "Babe, you have to come see this." And because so my wife is Dominican, and so for her, when she saw your email, her words were, "Wow, I thought you might get a negative email, but this kind of speaks to why you're doing what you're doing." And it for me, it affirmed why I'm here. And so thank you for sharing. And I'm so fortunate and happy that it impacted Dallas the way it did.
Yes.
So first things first, did you get your job back, Miss Lifka? And Mr. Machado, I also want to know, did you get any negative emails too? They're all canceled out by Danita's one positive one, but that's what I want to know.
I will say nothing, no emails, nothing written, no paper trail. And I don't want to say that that's intentional or not. I'm just stating the facts. But I have had several people in the school come up to me and just ask me if I was sure about what I was doing, or if I've read the website and the mission statement and just certain, I don't want to call them jabs, but points of reference, as though I was unaware. However, I'm a Black male. I'm doing okay today, but it's not because, you know, I didn't have to go through the same things our students or anybody else in any community has to go through today. Like I said before, I chalk a lot of it up to luck and meeting people. And so for me, it pains me because I know exactly how that feels to have to pretend to be someone else to get to the office and have to turn my music down. If you guys saw the bio picture, I had my hair short forever because growing it out and having curly hair and getting a fade is just not as accepted. And so it took me a long time to get comfortable with being me, being the guy who has tattoos in the workplace, showing those tattoos, being the guy who didn't grow up playing golf, who never had, you know, access to a country club, and being able to vocalize those things. It sounds minor, but when you're in an environment and you're trying to support your family and you're trying to be successful and you're trying to get promoted, I found myself sort of conforming to sort of what the expectation was, and I'm happy today to say that I've stopped that. And yeah, there's been some negative impact because of it, and you know, some dollars in the fund that have gone away. But overall, I think, you know, Black Lives Matter, the movement, and where it stands today, is just phenomenal in the awareness it's brought to light, and I support that wholeheartedly, and without concern for what it might do to my reputation or what it might do to my career. And so,
How did you respond to the folks when they were saying that? I'm hoping you got equal amounts of support or equal amounts of, hey, show me how you did that. I want to do that.
I don't know that I would say I got equal amount of support. It's more concern. The most support I can say, that's cool that you did that. I don't know if I would be able to. And a lot of it stems from, you know, fortunately for me, I'm not in a position where sort of, you know, this is what's putting food on the table, and without it, I'm crushed. And so there's a lot of individuals who feel the same way I do. There's just this sort of overarching concern that if I do speak my mind, if I do have a Bitmoji with a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, that can ruin me, that can impact my family. And so there is this overarching concern. And so I don't want to say that there is no support, but it's difficult for a lot of people to show that support out loud, at least.
I find that very interesting, Mr. Machado, especially since Richardson has gone to such great lengths with the creation of the Department of Equity and Inclusion within the district, creating the equity committee. But I'm not naive to the fact that there are people that are, you know, are concerned about their jobs. I just find that very interesting that a simple Bitmoji classroom will give people pause, even though, you know, our district motto, all means all, and the creation of the equity department. I assume that people would be more accepting to at least try it or at least do it. But I guess that takes time with everyone becoming comfortable and everyone being willing to step outside of the conformity that you spoke of. So I want to ask you, Taylor, you also did a Bitmoji classroom.
Right.
What were you expecting to happen when you created your classroom?
Yeah. It's an interesting question because, and so many people ask me this, like, what were you thinking? And it's interesting because I thought it was great. I'm sending it all around, sending it to my parents. Like, this is so, I was just, first of all, I'm not tech savvy. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I did this. Like sitting in front of this YouTube tutorial, wondering like how people have time or knowledge to create these tutorials, right? But I wasn't nervous, or I did not think that it would ever, as you're saying, Danita, like causing this backlash, or that somebody would ever really even consider that a Bitmoji classroom would cause such a rise, right? I almost felt like when I was put on leave and had to be, you know, talking about losing my job with a lawyer from the district who's calling me, like, I wanted to laugh because we kept saying Bitmoji, right? Like, this is just so absurd.
Cartoon.
But right, a cartoon. And I didn't take pause, one, because like Mr. Machado saying, I'm full-heartedly stand behind Black Lives Matter. I full-heartedly stand behind making my classroom a safe and affirming space for my undocumented students, for my LGBTQ plus students. It's not something I have to consider, like, how do I feel about that? And then on the same page, I have had not the exact same posters, but posters speaking the same message of teaching tolerance in my classroom and having my classroom be an anti-racist space for the past 3 years that I've been teaching at Roma ISD. And nothing has been said. So when this all happened, I was obviously taken aback. And I think it speaks to so many different things, right? About what does it mean now to be in a virtual space? And once people are catching wind of something that's online, that can never be erased, or once it's out there. And I had a very unique story because my Bitmoji classroom became sort of a ploy in a woman who was running for a seat in Texas. And she had sort of used me as part of her campaign, and about how, I don't know if you had seen the post or whatever, but, you know, calling me a Marxist and socializing children with racist ideologies, and that I had posters of Antifa members on my board, which was just a poet. It's just totally baseless information, right? So no, I never really thought twice about it, and I'm proud of it, and I'm using it in my classroom today, and I'm going to stand by it, and my kids stand by it. And but it has been hard, and kind of I was thinking about this when Andrew was speaking about like backlash or hate mail, and unfortunately, like my inbox has been flooded with hate mail and people sending threats and hate mail to my home and to the school, which is so weird, right? Like I go to pick up my school supplies and I'm getting hate mail from people telling me that I'm anti-God and I'm a racist and that it's just, it really makes me think, like, trying to take a step back and really wonder how, in the name of God, can somebody, because somebody's taking time to sit down and write that and like really believing that, right? That somebody who's calling for anti-racist space and teaching tolerance in their classroom and saying that Black Lives Matter, and, you know, my Black students are valid and my brown students are valid and my undocumented students are valid and my LGBTQ students are valid and need to be affirmed. And it really makes me wonder how people can truly and really believe and sit down and write me something saying that I'm creating division in an already divided world, and that I hate God and that I hate God's children, and that, you know, it's just, I don't know. It's so hard to understand how that can be.
It's the opposite of that.
Right. Ah, yes.
So how have you managed to let a lot of that just go over you? Do you have a bunch of people supporting you in the background?
Yeah, totally. And for every piece of, it's like so crazy. I'm going to say I'm receiving hate mail. Like, I'm just a lame teacher. But
Zero.
For every piece of hate mail, I think I was so insistent on knowing the numbers to prove the point that I really believe that there are more people who believe in this than don't, right? For the 35 pieces of hate mail, there's 150 pieces of mail in my inbox from, like you were saying at the beginning, students who, you know, this does matter to. And, you know, when I've got 11-year-olds emailing me like, hi, I'm Juan from Dallas, and I saw your story, and I feel like I don't matter. And if I had a teacher like you, maybe I wouldn't be skipping class. You know, it's like this matters, and our kids matter, and our kids need to be affirmed and valued in school and outside of school. And for our kids that, like you were saying, Lowry, maybe don't, you know, I live on the border and we are a 99% Hispanic population. And so my kids need to know that there are people outside of this town that don't look like them and they matter too, right? And it's hard, and it's been so hard. I think my first 2 years here, I will admit to making mistakes and being so angry, right? Like, you don't say that, and you need to sit down, right? When we're using derogatory terms or talking and using racist slurs, or when we're calling the student next to them gay, when there's a student next to that student who identifies as part of the LGBTQ plus community. And like, I think I had a lot of anger, right? And I've been able to take a step back and really realize that my kids don't have that perspective, right? And it's all about education and letting my students know we don't use that word because that's not our word, right? And this word comes from a place of hurt, and it's not yours to say. And so making those windows and those mirrors for our kids is so important. But it's hard, and it's so hard when you live in such a homogeneous community, right? When everybody looks the same. And it's definitely a process. But to your question of how do we deal with it, there are so many people, you all, who are on our side, and we just need to really believe that. But as for the others, I don't know. That is a question that we all need to talk about. How do we respond to those people? And then that had me thinking too, my mom, of course, being a mom, right, in Chicago, like, you can't respond to those people like, what if they come and get you, or just complete nonsense, right? But then what? If we're not having dialogue or we're not having conversation, then those people are just left, and our marginalized populations are left to deal with the racist behaviors of those individuals. And so people of privilege like myself, I'm just basking in my privilege to leave those people there, right? And believing these ideas. And that's not okay either. And so trying to navigate differences through dialogue is something that I'm really trying to work on. But it's hard.
So, Mr. Machado, how are you able to deal with the backlash? Because I know it's got to, for both of you, I know it's got to be like mentally draining, you know, to get maybe an email like me, lift your spirits, and then, you know, 15, 20 minutes later or the next day, you get one that just pretty much sucks the joy out of you. Mentally, how are you processing it? How are you dealing with it?
Yeah. I'll say it's part of that resiliency I was speaking to that our students, that our children have, that we're unaware of. Unfortunately, this isn't new. It's just it's come to light a little bit more now than before. But I mean, growing up hearing derogatory statements, or I mean, a couple of years ago, walking into a mall with my family, right? The security guard would ask me if I needed help. No, I'm here to buy a dress for my daughter. Oh, where's your family? Right. And just those certain sort of passive aggressive moments. It's sad, but I've sort of become numb to it. I don't allow it to bother me. I don't let it faze me. And so because of that, you could call it thick skin or resiliency, but when I do get that, it's just more of the same. And so it's not as impactful, and I don't take it personal, because I'm 32 years old now. And so I'm not saying I'm the oldest, but it's just been so long, and I'm used to it, whether it was me growing up in the neighborhood I did, or whether it was in the Navy, or whether it was in college or in finance. I've dealt with it so much that it doesn't bother. It kind of, today it just fuels me. Because I do have a lot on my plate, but I'm not tired, I'm not drained, I'm not overwhelmed. It's because I believe in self-empowerment. And you can say all you want to say, and you can feel however you want to feel. But at the end of the day, my accomplishments, my credentials, and my platform is what empowers me. And so I look to that. I look to my family. I have the support at home. I look to my extended family. I have it outside of my home. And I could always reflect inside and say, no matter what someone says or someone feels towards you, you can confidently say that I'm a role model for my daughter. I can confidently say, this is what I've gone through, this is what I've achieved, and this is what I plan on achieving. And so for me, it just gives me reason to continue going forward.
I love the different dynamics that the both of you bring to this discussion, because Taylor comes from a place of privilege. You don't. She hasn't experienced what you've experienced. As you said, I'm used to it. And I think when this group initially started, that was the crux. A lot of our white moms and dads, when the people of color in the group would say certain things, you're like, oh, we're used to that. And then our white allies, what do you mean you're used to it? Because we've heard it all our lives. I made a comment on a post, I can't really remember, maybe Larry can. And I made a post, your first initial encounter where racism determines who you are. And my first initial encounter with racism, I was 8 years old. And a lot of people in the group were shocked. What do you mean you were 8 years old? Yeah, I was 8 years old. I wanted a hamburger. And I grew up in Mississippi, in the Delta, and I wanted a hamburger. That's all I wanted. I wanted a hamburger from a place other people go to. But for my father to tell me we can't go in there, and for him to tell me we couldn't go in there because of the way we looked, that was my first account of racism in my hometown. And it was so like, it's a hamburger. In my little 8-year-old mind, that's all I thought, it's a hamburger. So it's rather interesting that I hate that anyone has to say, I'm used to that. I hate that. I hate that. And I don't want my children to even utter those words. I hate that. I'm used to that. It happens. People say that all the time. We should strive better for our children, for this generation. But, we also have to be mindful that there are people that will continue to raise their children the way that they were brought up. And we have to be mindful that these things will continue to happen, and that, as sad as it may be, we have to raise our children to be tough. We have to raise our kids to experience these things. We have conversations with our children that other people will never have, and that they don't have to have. And it's different. And I think having these types of conversations where two different worlds come together, experiencing the same thing, but from two different perspectives. Mm-hmm. And both of your stories are so unique and so poignant right now, especially in the current climate. And I just applaud both of you. I appreciate both of you.
And Danita, if I may, you hit the nail on the head. You said, for your child, that's something you hope they would never have to say. But there are conversations that you do have with your child today that not all families everywhere have to have with their child. And I honestly believe that it's those conversations that not everyone has that gives your child the leg up for tomorrow. Because a lot of the things I've learned, education-wise, college, that's available to anybody, and anybody can learn that, and anybody can become a professional in any field they want to be. It just takes time. If you spend 5-10 years in any profession, you will be a subject matter expert. but like I was saying before, and I feel strongly about, you can't teach that feeling. You can't teach that emotion that you experience when you have that conversation with your child, right? That is something that will stick with you and will stick with your child forever, and that empowers your child and gives them a leg up, right? Because we could all get good grades, but we can't all learn that experience from a book. And I honestly and truly believe that that is what provides, that is the difference maker, that is the differentiator, not the GPA, because you can get whatever GPA you want, depends on how long you study. And so because of that, I truly believe my child, your child, will be in a position where they will be differentiated enough to the positive that will allow them to excel in areas that people in our community just haven't considered much in the past. And through that, I think that provides the empowerment we're looking for. And like you said, I think it's going to take time. It's unfortunate, but I don't think this is a 5-year, 10-year sort of turnaround. It's systemic. There's systems in place. I mean, if you look at a red line map of Dallas, in the 40s versus today, it's unchanged. These are systemic things. These are neighborhoods that have been created. They're just not the way they are by accident. The segregation is very isolated, and you can see that. And so I think it will take time, but where I'm hopeful, where I feel really good, and I tell people all the time, and some of them tell me I'm crazy. I just feel the world I'm entering, and the world, and I say I'm entering because I'm not at the age where I can sit as an executive board member. I'm probably not running for president anytime soon. But that life that I'm entering, and that our kids are going to be entering in the next couple decades, provides so much power that the awareness is there that they can serve in those board seats. They can serve in those positions of power that actually influence the policy. And so I'm hopeful and I'm confident, and I feel very good about the future. And I feel, and anyone who's gone through what I've gone through is in a position that their skill set sort of cannot be equaled based off of what you learned in a book.
So, Mr. Machado, if a kid has a teacher like you or like Miss Lifka, is lucky to have someone like you that believes in them and can see that they have been hurt before by other teachers, which happens, that shame happens, that racism, just little microaggressions happen, the over disciplining happens, and it can wear away at their self-esteem. So I see that if they are lucky to have a teacher like you, maybe that can kind of turn them around. But what if they keep having those teachers? How can they find that self-empowerment and resilience that you're talking about? I mean, hopefully, yes, their community and their family is giving it to them, but how can they get that?
That is a tough question, and that is $1 million question. But I think the way you get that, it spans from awareness, right? Because I look at myself and my experience, because that's what I'm most comfortable with. I didn't have that. I didn't have it growing up. I didn't have it after high school. I didn't have it in the Navy. However, as I experienced life, as I was exposed to other countries and other ways of life and other ethnicities and just different ways of living, I was able to sort of, if you look at the world sort of as a panorama, and then it kind of comes into focus. And as you mature and as you have experiences in your life, I realized much later than our students would with a helpful teacher, that this is why I stand out. But it's that situation, it's those feelings, it's those emotions that subconsciously build that resilience. Because like all things, think of an email inbox. I wasn't around when email was invented, but I'm sure it was like fantastic, right? But nowadays we view email as this commodity, right? You're almost numb to it. You get 100 emails a day and you're just like, yeah, I'll check it. Or when you look at the mail outside, you might get a letter that you're interested in, but most of the stuff you're not even opening, you're just throwing it out. And I think it's those experiences that those students are going through. And it doesn't feel good. I'm not saying it's going to feel great and it's going to put them down. But at some point, I would hope that builds resilience, that allows that individual to be able to persevere. When they meet a challenge, whatever that challenge is, they can look back and say, you know, their foundation is grounded much deeper than anyone else who hasn't experienced what they have. And so they can look back and say, hey, if you think this is bad, you have no idea, right? And they can just traverse that terrain much easier than someone else who hasn't experienced that. And so it's not a straightforward answer and say like, oh, you know, you can get it from this area. But I think it's through time and I think through efforts such as this that allow them to be aware. At least you only need to be made aware one time. And once you realize that, once you have that epiphany, it doesn't go away.
Well, and that just the gift of you telling your story to your students, that it wasn't always easy for me. It was hard. I wasn't always considered a winner, but it turned around. Just knowing that there's a trajectory. You're not defined by what's happening right now. That's so important for them to know about adults in their lives.
Right.
I agree.
So I always do this when we have a panel. So a lot of people laugh at this question. So if you had a magic wand and only one wish, what would you want to do differently within your school district to improve equity and inclusion?
I think I can say, Danita, just even hearing you, I don't know the ins and outs of y'all's district or whatever, but I heard you mention something about y'all have a DEI committee or something of that sort. Did you say
Yes.
that?
Yes.
I feel like I would do anything for that in our district, right? And just to think about right now, when I was put on leave because of my classroom, and I'm sitting in a room full of, you know, majority men and people in our community that hold all of the wealth or the power. I hate that word, but those are the people in our community who are making these decisions, and it's not representative of who we are or what this world looks like or who's there and who needs to be represented and who needs to be heard. And that's a huge problem in of itself. And then I think of what people sitting in those positions of privilege and wealth in our community who do hold the voice for everybody, how we could all benefit from education, right, around these issues. And, you know, and I was speaking candidly about this to the people in the room, like, I'm privileged to have gone through DEI training, and it's so necessary and important. And I have learned so much, and like, that needs to be a class. That needs to be a space that everybody has available to them, because without it, where do we sit? And if I hadn't gone through DEI training through Teach for America or in college, I think I would be so nervous to be speaking on a panel like this, right? And to be speaking across lines of difference. And I think that's why we're here, right? Is because education changes the world, and education opens our eyes to everything. And, you know, so to have a space like that, and to have a panel, or not a panel, but a committee that in of itself is diverse and representative of who we are and who our community is and who our kids are. And then that committee making decisions to make, you know, DEI training necessary. And because making DEI training necessary is then the first step to then making anti-racist spaces and anti-racist classrooms and teaching tolerance, not just, oh, maybe you'll get lucky to have one of those teachers, but it's required, you know? And I think that that's possible. And like Mr. Machado was saying, it's systemic, right? And it's a really big change that needs to be made. But once the people at the top are realizing that and educating themselves and the people around them about what needs to happen, that's when I think we're going to see change. Because especially in a community like Roma, when I'm talking about DEI, it's like way over everybody's head, right? And it just can't be over our head anymore, right? Like we can't be saying what's DEI.
But what about the students? Do you feel like they're open to it? You said they are supportive of you.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes this story my story so unique, is that if you know the ins and outs, it was really my students who got me my job back. One of my old students had started a petition online to remove Taylor Lifka from administrative leave. And it got over 50,000 signatures. But to that, I would say people aren't signing to take Taylor Lifka off administrative leave, but people were signing to insist upon having, you know, classrooms be spaces of anti-racism and tolerance. But I think to that point, Larry, where you're saying, are my kids aware or are my kids understanding? Yes, and especially the students that I've taught. And I think it just speaks then again to how much of an impact, you know, we can have in a classroom. Like I sit down sometimes and I think like feeling so drained, like, oh, I have to read these, you know, 157 letters or whatever my kids are working on right now. And it's just like, you can get so caught up in that mundane, like I got to grade this, we have to be prepared for the star, where none of that stuff matters. Or like Andrew, you were saying earlier about like, that's not the textbook. That's not what you're learning in the textbook. And I try to remain grounded in that day in, day out. Like I always tell my kids, I think it's awesome that you pass the star, and it's, excuse my language, but it's shitty that that's a barrier that's in your way right now to being successful, is passing this state mandated exam. But at the end of the day, if you walk out of my classroom and you're not respectful to your peers and you're not respectful to the people outside this classroom who don't act like you or think like you or look like you, like I failed at my job. Because my job isn't to make you pass the STAR test. The way I see it is my job is to make you understand that we respect people in this world for who they are. And I think that the way that my students reacted to this just shows how much of an impact we can have on our kids, because my kids got that, right? And then my kids spoke up and used their voices and said, wait, hold on a second. She's being placed on leave, but that doesn't make sense, right? And that's not the way that the world should work, because she's not asking us to do anything but be kind. My neighbor was my student, and he had come over when I was on leave, knocking on the door, like not understanding all the ins and outs of it. But I think talking to a 15-year-old brings it down to a level where it's like, this isn't complicated. You know, he's like, I don't get it, miss. Like, weren't you just asking people to be nice? And I think that's where it just really hits me, like, our kids get this, you know, and it's not political. And then when we see this become so divisive, and, you know, I'm part of Marianne Knowlton's campaign for Texans for Trump, it's just amplified in this disturbing way right now. And it's not anything like that. And it makes us realize, like, how can 15-year-olds get this, but 40-year-olds can't, you know? So yes, I think my kids are supportive and they get it. And it just comes down to being in a space like that and being open to that. And, you know, so many of my kids who enter that space closed off and kind of weirded out, maybe even at the beginning, like, what is this chick about, right? But then sharing time and space, I mean, we spend a lot of time with these kids every single day, you know, and they get it. But we just need to be wondering then, how can all of the spaces look like that? Because having one teacher that's talking about this and then going around to 8 other rooms the rest of the day where none of this is ever brought up, it's hard for kids to grasp. You know, it's all about culture and what our districts are doing and mandating. Not saying, oh, it's cool that your Bitmoji has a Black Lives Matter shirt, but why don't all of us have a Black Lives Matter shirt on in our Bitmojis.
Yes, because it's about, I mean, your answer maybe to them, why are you doing this? Because I know that if a child doesn't feel safe at school, they're not going to learn that.
Totally.
Period.
Totally. And we have all this
You want them to learn?
conversation about curriculum and, you know, the TEKS and passing the STAR. And I don't know when we're going to realize that none of that stuff matters if our kids don't feel safe, or if our kids don't want to learn, or if our kids don't even want to step into the classroom. Because when my kid doesn't feel like they're welcome or valued or validated, they're hiding in the bathroom or they're out on the football field skipping class. And who isn't going to do that when you're 15 and you feel scared to walk into that space, right? Because you're not affirmed, or you're not seen, or you're not heard.
Right.
And I don't know when the conversation is going to change, because when I'm sitting there and everyone's talking about curriculum, I'm like, when are we going to talk about the fact that our attendance is down 20%? Or when are we going to talk about the fact that when we have a referral written for our kids, they go sit in ISS and go on their phone all day, but nobody's talking to them about why they behaved the way that they did, or what's happening at home, or who's talking to them, or who's not talking to them, you know? It's just, we need to be better because our kids deserve it. And whatever's happening right now just isn't it.
Yep. So
And-
your magic wand, and I need to do a lot of magic, but we'll get it in the mail to you.
Sorry, y'all gave me a moment to go off on a
No,
tangent.
that was good. That's so good. I mean, the things you're saying are the things that need to happen societal wise too. And
Totally systemic, and
yes,
it's
systemic.
not going to happen tomorrow. But
the police need to check in that way too. All of that. So, Mr. Machado, what would you do with your magic wand? And Danita and I should say, and I hope you know this too, that since you are an RISD teacher, Dr. Stone has your back, and she you kudos for using that Bitmoji. So.
And I don't want to make it, and if I did make it seem this way, I don't want that RISD isn't supportive. And Danita, you mentioned sort of the DEI sort of program in play. However, I do think it's tough, right? Because what we're asking someone to do, right, is whatever age you are, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, we're asking you to take all those years of sort of learning, and I want you to unlearn a lot of that, right? And then instantaneously, I want you to apply this new form of thinking. And for me, I don't think that's feasible. I don't think it's a feasible ask. It's going to take time. So with my magic wand, it's magic, right?
Right.
And so I think
I love magic.
tell me about it. I think if I can do anything, and I'll preface this with, I think human beings are inherently good people. I've used the word exposure, I don't know how many times already, because I think exposure is really important. It's really difficult to empathize or sympathize if you've never felt that experience or are familiar with that experience. And so if I could, with my magic wand, I would just take my burden, sort of what I feel, even the things I'm unaware of, the anxiety I feel when cops are around, because I know I'm going to get pulled over because of the car I drive, or just those small nuances. If I could just lift that and sort of share that with everyone who hasn't had to feel that way, I confidently believe that most, not all, but most people would say, oh my God, I don't want to feel like this. This sucks. Why do you have this anxiety? Why do you instantly walk into a room and feel awkward?
Yeah.
Right? Like these are feelings that, unfortunately, I say, yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, I'm numb to it, but I can't teach you this feeling. Right? And so with my magic wand, I want to take this off my shoulders and anyone else's shoulders who have gone through the same things, and place it on someone else who hasn't had to experience that. because it's very, I can see it, and I don't blame people directly, because I can see someone say, I can tell my story of saying, hey, I walk into a mall and the security guard's always asking me if I need help, right? I can understand someone saying, okay, they ask you if you need some help, I get it, but it's not that serious, right? I understand where someone would come from, and I wouldn't personally say, oh, you're insensitive, because you don't understand what it feels like. You don't get it. And I can't blame you for not getting it. So if I'm asking you to take this curriculum, if I'm telling you you have to run with this, it is difficult for you to implement, first and foremost, because you haven't lived it. And then two, it's even more difficult for you to teach it, right? You don't feel this way, not naturally. And so it's difficult for you to teach it. And so I don't want to take away from anything that the district has implemented. I just think it's an unrealistic ask that if you implement it and give people a few videos to watch, that just like that, life changes, right? Because everyone in this room and everyone watching right now, we all have our own things we need to unlearn. Our cultures have brought us up a certain way, right? And I have no problem speaking to myself, but there are inherent things that I had to unlearn. Growing up in the neighborhood I grew up, women to me were just like, oh, get as many as you can, right? And a woman would walk by on the summer and we'd be on the stoop and all the guys are like, hey, mom, hey, what's up, right? And sort of those are things that I had to unlearn. That was not okay. I have a wife, I have a daughter. I had to unlearn these things, and they didn't happen overnight, right? And so I don't want to make it seem like I'm giving anyone a free pass, but I do want to make it sort of make the community aware that these things do take time. And I think it's just a matter of having these conversations, right? Showing, just bringing to light, right? Everything that's happening and that is happening right now. And that's why I feel so empowered. I feel so enlightened, not because of the things that are happening, but because of what it entails, of what it means, of what it provides. And I can confidently say that today, more than 5 years ago, that I feel that there are more people concerned about my well-being, concerned about my equity than there were. And so that's what I would do with my magic wand, just place my burden on anyone's shoulders to say, hey, this is what I'm talking about.
Yes.
This is it.
Oh, that's so good. To build true empathy. And like you're saying, we can't understand, but here's what we can do, Mr. Machado. We can believe you. And that's all people are asking. Just believe you when you tell the superintendent or the teacher or the principal or the board, these things hurt us. And then we say, okay, we're just going to believe you and now help us move forward. So we can't believe you if we don't hear you first. So yeah, I think these conversations are so important. And what I'm hoping too, and I can tell you guys are doing this, that you're giving your students a place to say what they're feeling and express their fears right now and their concerns. And what I'm really hoping is that other teachers feel comfortable doing that, because there's a lot of anxiety right now. And I want the students to feel like they have a safe place to talk about what is important right now. Because like you said, Ms. Lifka, these should not be necessarily political things. These are matters of someone feeling safe and accepted.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about your wand, Mr. Machado, because I'm like, who can I give this? Who can I give this to? Because I think when I did my introductory video for the group, I let the group know that whenever there is a shooting of an unarmed Black man,
I didn't understand that.
I wasn't talking to you. The anxiety in my home goes up. I made a statement that many parents don't know how long it takes their children to get to Whataburger and back, but I do. Because I know if they're not back in 22 minutes, that there may be an issue. And these are things that I live with whenever my children leave the home. And there were some that was, understandably, shook. Like, why do you know that? Like, I have to know that because of the climate in which we live in. I have to know those types of things. I have to be on guard at all times. I have a 26-year-old. If he says he's going to go hang with friends, I love, respect, and know he's not going to do any wrong, but I don't go to sleep till he gets home for fear of missing a phone call that there's something wrong, for fear of missing a phone call that there's something wrong. And it's not that it has anything to do with trust. It's just the world that we live in. I have to always be on guard when my children are not with me. And I think being able to, with the magic wand, share that with someone to see how day-to-day, your day-to-day and my day-to-day don't have the same stress levels. And I think that's where, if that was at all possible, like a pill or something, that would be awesome. Like, maybe a minor blood transfusion or something.
And it makes me think, Danita. Oh, sorry, Andrew. I didn't
No,
know you could-
please. I was just ad-libbing. I can't agree more.
I was just gonna say, it makes me think so much about. So if the blood transfusion doesn't work, or if our wands aren't here, is it enough for people? If your experience, Danita or Andrew, I'm never gonna understand, right? And that's just the reality because of the place of privilege that I sit in. Then what is the next step? And I think about like I don't know who's viewing this video or this live on YouTube, but it makes me think, I know hundreds of people who need to be viewing this video. And so it makes me think then about if other people can't, put on a mask that makes them feel what y'all are feeling, or wave the magic wand, then is sitting in it and hearing this firsthand from you, Danita, like when you're talking about your sons or daughters going to Whataburger, like I feel so much, right? And I think when you were saying, Andrew, like people are good people, is it that people aren't hearing this enough, or they're not having a firsthand account, or they don't know you, Danita, as a friend or a mom against racism? Or, I think of so many of my cousins or people in my extended family who could maybe name the people of color in their circle on like 2 fingers. And so then, if we can't wave the magic wand, what can we do? And
I think you've answered that question already. And so if you think about what you just said, you said, I'll never think about, I'll never understand how you feel.
right.
And I'll challenge that. Because you've taken the step to do something you felt was expected, was normal. You weren't trying to make, this loud public statement. You just said, yeah, Black Lives Matter. LGBTQ plus community matters. And by doing that, by having your student come to your door and say, you're just telling people to be nice, right? In the same way that I'm just trying to be an adult, you got backlash for it. And that feeling you felt, to me at least, is if it's not the same, it at least rhymes with how I feel for just being me. And so I challenge you, and I say, it's not that you'll never feel what I feel. You just did. I think you just experienced that. And I think it goes to what Lowry said, by, believing, right? You didn't feel it at first, but you believed your students, right? You believed that the undocumented students, you believed the Black students, right? You believed the LGBTQ students. And because you believed them, you took a stance, subconsciously or not, right? And you felt backlash because of it. And in your mind, there was a point of confusion where you're just like, what is the issue here, right? And so that, I think, is that experience. That is that feeling, a sense of confusion on, you know, I'm walking home. Why are they asking me, what am I doing in this neighborhood? Right. When I moved to Plano, I was here the first couple months, and a police officer kind of went around the block a few times. And I was jogging around, and I didn't have a shirt on. And I was just jogging around, just doing laps. And, you know, they made their rounds, and then they were, you know, driving maybe 2-3 miles an hour behind me until, you know, they sounded the sound and asked me to come to the car, and asked me what I was doing in the neighborhood. And I said, I live here. And he said, do you have identification? I said, no, I'm in basketball shorts and some sneakers. I don't have anything with me. I'm just running around the neighborhood, just getting a workout in. And they followed me home to ensure I got inside the house. And so it's that feeling of why? Because of the way I look. I have tattoos. I do have tattoos. And it's because I look like that I can't live here in Plano, at least not in the neighborhood I do. And so it's that feeling of, why are you singling me out for I'm not doing anything different from what anybody else does. You felt that. And so you've experienced that, and you've experienced that because you believed someone's story, right? And so that's it, right? And your entire perspective has changed. So you are that magic wand, right? And so I think the answer is it's not watching the video. It's what Larry said. It's believing and then taking a stance. And unfortunately, at least today, it's likely that there will be some backlash. And that is the feeling.
And I think for me, persons of color have had to their living has to be validated. Our everyday living, it has to be validated. We have to be given a permission to wear our natural hair. We can't do it on our own. We have to seek permission. We have to have permission. I mean, you refused to grow your hair out because of the certain job that you had, because it didn't fit some stereotypical mold that was created by someone. And so our just basic existence, just wanting to live, has to be validated by someone else. What makes it difficult for people of color? We can't live in a certain area because it has to be validated by someone else. We have to be given permission to live in certain places, to work in certain places, for our children to attend school in certain places. Otherwise, it's just, we shouldn't be there. And it's almost like, who made those decisions that we can't be there? Mm-hmm. And so everything we do, it's like it's almost as if we have to have permission. He has to have permission to go run in his neighborhood. And that is unfortunate. That is unfortunate that has been happening for years.
It goes back to that feeling that you were saying, Mr. Machado, if you grow up like that and live like that every day, you eventually have to turn to your own self-validation and self-empowerment. And as parents, you're doing such an awesome job teaching your children to have that. So we need our teachers to somehow understand that all students need to be able to rely on themselves, and God, at least we need to not wear down their self-esteem more, but help build that up. So you guys are the teachers doing that and making that possible. And Mr. Machado, the expression that Dallas said, he cares about me. In the end, that should be what every student feels when they do enter a classroom, whether it's physical or virtual. There should be some kind of, I'm safe here, he cares about me. And now Dallas is opening his mind and heart to learning for the rest of the year. It was as easy as that.
Mhm.
But as significant and meaningful as that. So I think that's the lesson for all the teachers.
So I know it's a school night and we don't want to keep you guys, but I wonder if you can give us maybe a 1-2 minute statement of what people should take away from this video.
I'll go first because I'm trying to think and gather my thoughts because there's so much I want to say. For anybody watching, if you're and I'm bifurcating this, right? And so there's two sides of the fence here. And so if you're on one side and you feel the way I do, or you've experienced anything that I have, or something similar, I think just know that that has made you resilient. That is literally giving you a leg up, and you should use that as an empowering skill. Don't let it crush you. Use that to continue moving forward. Use that to say, you know what, I've been through a lot worse, and so whatever challenges ahead of me, it can't stop me. And for anyone on the other side of that fence, I'm just gonna echo what Larry said, and just if it's not me that you believe someone, and you know, it doesn't have to be me, it doesn't have to be anybody here, but someone closer to you that has voiced sort of a similar feeling. It doesn't have to be based on race. It could be based on sort of sexual preference. I don't care what it is, but just believe them for a second, and support them. And I think in that you will have an opportunity to experience what they experience, any negativity they experience, because of your support of somebody else.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, you have me thinking so many things. It's hard to sum this up, but I think, at least from an educator's perspective, because it's how I'm entering this space, is that if you're watching this video, Mr. Machado and myself shouldn't be like an anomaly or this like great example, but it should be the expectation, right? And if we are entering that space as educators, it should be because we want our kids to feel safe and affirmed and valued. Like Danita's son, who enters that space and said he cares about me. And I pray to God that in, 5 years or 10 years, there doesn't need to be this Zoom call where we're talking about this, and that it shouldn't be such a foreign idea that a teacher is entering that space and validating and caring for their students. And the second piece is that I think I've been thinking a lot about, as I'm sitting here, like, who needs to be viewing this and who needs to be a part of this conversation. And I know that, I don't know if this is recorded or saved, but I hope that it is, and that I can get this and send this out to my family and send this out to that email chain who's sick and tired of hearing from you, because it's never too much. And I think a lot about how often I want to put people in my corner that understand this already, or, have tried to understand this in whatever capacity that they're able to. And I feel like I want to always be surrounding myself by those people. And it's so comfortable to say, like, I'm done with my family members who are voting for Trump, and I'm done with people who are acting like this, and I can't anymore. But you need to be asking yourself then, who is dealing with those people? And a mentor of mine gave me a really good analogy the other day, saying, like, it's not okay just to invite the people that, like, who's on your bus. And it's not okay just to be asking people and inviting people onto your bus who already agree with you and who already understand the situation, because then where's the change, right? And if there's no dialogue and people aren't on your bus who don't want to hear what you have to say, then we are going to be having this conversation again. And it's going to be a long, hard road, and it's not going to happen overnight, but every person pulling their weight matters. So send this video out.
Will do.
Thank you so much, y'all, for having me tonight.
Thank you
you.
guys so much. So yes, it is recorded. We'll send it to you. We'll send you the link with some Amazon credits so y'all can choose some goodies for your classrooms. And then yeah, we can just keep the education going with sending this video, and would love to have you guys back sometime. The other thing we can send you is our back to school anti-racist checklist for teachers that we were hoping teachers share with each other, and our back to school anti-racist checklist for students too and their families. That might be interesting to talk about in class too. And
Right.
Danita, I'll let you close us up. We have a nice thing we say when we end, and you guys certainly are troublemakers, good troublemakers.
So I want to say something else. I would love it. We have a teens anti-racist group. I would love it if each of you, this is just an invite, if each one of you would take a turn leading. I mean, typically they'll read a book, but when you are leading it, it can be, your discretion. Doesn't have to be a book. But I would love for our kids to see two teachers in the field that truly are representative of, the movement and making brave and safe spaces.
I'd love
Yeah.
to be there.
I'm all about it. Share the info.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you guys for agreeing to join us. This was, like I said, I've been waiting on this conversation for a long time. I was ready to drive to Roma, me and the kids, because they raise hell with me. And so thank you, Mr. Machado. We're just going to do wonderful things this school year.
Thank you.
And again, Lowry, thank you again for the platform. And we're going to make sure that everyone sees the video. We're going to make sure that that we keep this place open and this space open and safe for everyone. And you guys enjoy your night. And typically, because I'm with Poor People's Campaign, what we say is forward together, not one step back. So, love you guys.
But we also like to say, make good trouble.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Larry. Okay. I've been wearing the mask all day.
I know. You pat your head and
I
you wear
completely
the hat. I know. We're busy. We're doing voter registration drives. We got all kinds of stuff going on, you guys. So
Y'all are doing it all.
Yeah.
no, but y'all are doing the hardest work. So thank you for your service.
Thank you for having us tonight. And this is a
Good
great
night.
way
So much. I appreciate it.
Moms and more. Good
Good
night, teachers.
Night.
Superheroes.